Hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, and we bring you another episode in our You and Your Superannuation series. We're up to number 11. This one's all about nominating a beneficiary, just making sure your super goes to the person that you want it to go to. Before we kick off with the details, there's the disclaimer, facts and figures, information only. This is not advice. Okay, so superannuation is completely separate from your will, because superannuation is indeed a trust, and with a trust you need to nominate where the benefit from the trust will go to in retirement. So even if you've got a will, your superannuation is completely separate from that will. So your will could say, yep, I'm giving all my money to blah, but no, the superannuation has got a different beneficiary. That's exactly where the money would go to. It would go to the nominated person in the super fund. So we need to be a bit careful, obviously, that we ensure that the super is going to go where we want it to go. In fact, if you don't do a nomination, yes, the super fund would probably then, well, most super funds would then ask for a copy of the will. So if there's no nomination, they'll look at the will and get a bit of an idea, say, yep, this is where this person wanted the money to go to. They would look at that scenario, and it would pretty much they would certainly take that into account. Obviously, if your will was going to an aunt, but you actually had a partner or children, the super fund would look closely as to why you were doing that, and so it goes on. But the super fund can override anything that's in your will as far as the super is concerned. They have the full discretion to give the money to who they believe is the most appropriate person. So obviously, if we want our super to go where we want it to go, we should fill out a binding nomination. Now, there are two types of nomination. There is a binding and there is a non-binding. Now, a non-binding nomination is where you're sort of giving an indication to the super fund, this is where I would like it to go. And you're sort of telling all the details of where you'd like the money to go to, but that word non-binding is literally what it sounds like. It doesn't bind the super fund to that nomination. They certainly look very closely at it, and they would certainly need a very good reason not to give it to that person, but yes, they would have the discretion to overwrite a non-binding. If you've got a binding nomination, however, that one literally says you've got to give it to that person. That's where I want the money to go to. And basically the super fund doesn't have any discretion in that situation if there is a binding death nomination form in place. Now, of course, these binding nominations, they do expire every 3 years. Now, the reason they expire is the fact that obviously your circumstances can change, and they want to make sure that you have indeed kept these things up to date. So you might have nominated an old partner from years ago. Since then you've had 15 partners. The last thing you want is your super fund to go to someone you don't even like. So they just sort of remind you. Most super funds will just send you out a form or so about a month before it expires saying, do you just want to keep this thing going? Do you want to make a change? Or remind you to go online and so forth. Just depends on what sort of nomination you've got there. A non-binding normally doesn't expire. So non-binding, we just keep on going until you actually do change it. So it's a good idea to review these things every so often. Now, with the binding nomination, then you can only nominate your spouse, children, and that's children of any age, or anyone who has an interdependency relationship with you. So, if your dad's sick, and you're basically helping them out with finances and so forth, they're dependent on you for money, that you could certainly nominate those sort of persons under that ruling there. But you can't nominate the dog's home. You can't nominate your niece. You can't nominate your, even your brother or your sister if they are not indeed in some sort of interdependency relationship there. So if it comes down to the situation that you don't have a spouse and you don't have children, and you certainly do want to nominate your niece or your brother or sister or whatever the case may be, we can still use a binding death nomination, but on the form we tick the box that says we nominate your legal personal representative. And what that basically means is that they will then indeed send the money to the will, and then the will itself then spells out that the money from the super fund, you want it to go to your niece, your nephew, or so forth. So when you look at the paperwork there, you can sort of see that they've got your little boxes, and that the bottom box there on each row is your legal representative. And so you tick that box. Now, because if you tick the box to say your legal representative, you don't need to put any names in there. You know, the whole point is to send it to the will, where it's all spelt out in the will. But obviously, if you tick the box for spouse or child, then yes, you've got to then put down all the information required to spell out who that person is. But if you're nominating just your legal representative, effectively it's going to go to your estate, to your will. You just need to tick the box and do it. Now, of course, you can do it still in percentages. So you're putting percentages on the right-hand side there of the benefit. So you could indeed nominate a partner or a child or something, but you could still nominate a portion of it to go to your will, literally because you want to leave, I say, $10,000 or whatever it might be as a percentage there to go to a charity that you want, or some friend who you really believe deserve to have some of your money for whatever they've done throughout your life or whatever. This form is just from one particular super fund, but they're all pretty much the same. Generally speaking, they've either got 3 or 4 spaces there for different nominations. If you need to nominate 10 people, you've got 10 kids or whatever, you just literally just print off the form numerous times and just put the percentages in the boxes appropriate according to what you want to leave across the board there. So it's a bit of a hassle in the regard that we've got to redo these things, but I would certainly rather see you redo them than either not have one in the first place, or B, nominate someone who again you have no longer have a relationship, and they find that, well, you won't find it, you're dead, but your family may find that you indeed have nominated someone completely different, which, dare I say, wouldn't be nice. It's always good to talk about not just your super, really, we should be looking at having wills, powers of attorney, guardianship, all the things that relate to estate planning. Talk to someone. You can come and talk to us about how all this works. And of course, you may indeed need to talk to someone legal if you're not, if you need something more than just a standard will kit. So you've got a bit of a curly situation and you want a solicitor to draw it up, then certainly not a bad idea to get these things right. But you can't come back from the dead and sort it out. Happy to help, and we look forward to you joining us on a future session.